The primary vector for one of humanity's oldest afflictions is entirely unremarkable. Transmission occurs predominantly through the inhalation of aerosolized nasal droplets. The pathogen contained within these droplets is Mycobacterium leprae, a strictly intracellular bacterium that must hijack a host's cellular machinery to survive. While airborne transmission is most common, the pathogen can also pass directly through the skin, though this requires intimate and highly prolonged contact with an infected individual. This is a portrait of G.H. Armauer Hansen, who first isolated the leprobacillus in 1873. The disease itself, however, has been recorded in human texts as far back as 600 BC. The mechanism of entry is simple. The true danger of the pathogen lies in its unique, highly extended metabolic timeline once inside the body. Once M. leprae enters the host, it replicates exceptionally slowly, with a generation time of 12 to 13 days. This chart plots bacterial population growth over time. You can see the steep exponential curve of the related tubercle bacillus, which divides every 14 hours. By contrast, the replication rate for M. leprae appears as a nearly flat, horizontal line. This metabolic delay stretches the x-axis of the infection out over years. The typical incubation period before clinical symptoms appear is somewhere between 5 and 7 years. In certain clinical cases, this dormant incubation phase can stretch up to 40 years. Because the pathogen replicates so slowly, it avoids triggering early systemic alarms. It uses this multi-year window to quietly establish deep tissue footholds before the host's immune system recognizes the threat. The pathogen does not distribute evenly throughout the host. It has a specific tropism, requiring the cooler temperatures found at the body's extremities to survive. It systematically colonizes the skin, the upper respiratory tract, the eyes, the testes, and most critically, the peripheral nerves. Here, the rod-shaped bacillus drills directly into the translucent myelin sheath of a peripheral nerve's Schwann cell, turning it into a protective incubator. Left unchecked, this cellular infiltration progresses into severe bony deformities and extensive tissue disfigurement. By hiding inside the peripheral nervous system of cooler extremities, M. leprae sets the stage for the progressive loss of sensation and motor control that defines the disease. Every clinical presentation of leprosy, from a single skin patch to total facial collapse, is caused by the exact same bacterial strain. The divergence in symptoms is governed entirely by the host. Specifically, the severity depends on the strength of the patient's innate and cell-mediated immune response, or CMI. This spectrum, known as the Ridley-Jopling classification, maps this immune battle. It ranges from a high CMI on the left, known as tuberculoid leprosy, down to a low CMI on the right, categorized as lepromatous leprosy. A large percentage of individuals have a high degree of innate immunity to the bacillus, and even when infected, rarely develop any clinical disease. For those who do show symptoms, their localized cellular defenses act as the sole architects of their resulting clinical fate. If a patient has an intact cell-mediated immune response, they develop tuberculoid leprosy. In this microenvironment, a dominant T helper 1 response activates. The immune system releases potent signaling cytokines, specifically interferon gamma and interleukin-2. These cytokines force local macrophages to transform into tightly packed epithelioid cells and fused Langhans giant cells, building a dense wall around the bacteria. This aggressive containment strategy works. It successfully traps the pathogen, resulting in a paucibacillary state, where very few live bacteria remain. Macroscopically, this presents on the skin as a limited number of sharp-margined, asymmetrical, hypopigmented macules, as seen here. However, this aggressive local inflammation severely damages the surrounding tissue, presenting as early anesthetic skin lesions and thickened, swollen nerves. The immune system effectively isolates the pathogen, but this scorched earth cellular defense causes localized sensory nerve destruction in the process. Moving to the opposite end of the spectrum, patients with a deficient cell-mediated immune response develop lepromatous leprosy. Here, the immune system defaults to an exaggerated T helper 2 response. Driven by interleukin-6, 8, and TNF-alpha, the body triggers a massive, unhelpful polyclonal B-cell activation, producing antibodies that cannot reach the intracellular bacteria. Without the proper T helper 1 regulation, macrophages attempt to consume the bacteria but fail to digest them. Instead, they gorge on lipids and swell into useless lipid-laden foamy cells. Protected inside these foamy macrophages, unchecked bacterial growth occurs. They replicate into dense, cigar-like bundles, pushing the patient into a highly infectious multibacillary state. The clinical manifestation of this systemic spread is extreme. Looking at this presentation, we see many symmetrical skin lesions, the characteristic sagging of leonine facies, and eventually variable nerve palsies. This comparison matrix maps the allergic responses known as Lepra reactions. In lepromatous patients, we frequently see type 2 reactions. This is an immune complex-mediated hypersensitivity that causes painful erythematous nodules and damages distant organs like the eyes and kidneys. The failure to mount a targeted cell-mediated defense allows the bacteria to replicate systematically, culminating in profound, widespread structural collapse. To translate this clinical pathology into measurable data, diagnostic laboratories rely on the slit skin smear. Technicians collect samples from 6 specific sites, 4 sections of skin, typically the forehead, cheek, chin, and buttock, along with the earlobe, and mucosal scrapings from the nasal septum. The samples are treated using the Ziehl-Neelsen staining technique. Because M. leprae is less acid-fast than standard tubercle bacilli, a weaker 5% sulfuric acid is used for the decolorization step. This micrograph shows the result. You can clearly identify the red, acid-fast bacilli arranged in distinctive groups against a blue background. Under oil immersion, pathologists differentiate the health of the bacteria. Live bacilli appear uniformly stained with parallel sides, while dead bacilli look fragmented and granular. The slit skin smear directly visualizes the cellular reality of the Ridley-Jopling spectrum, confirming whether the patient is harboring isolated fragments or massive active clusters. Once the smear is prepared, the severity is graded using 2 mathematical indices. First is the bacteriological index, or BI, which tallies the total number of all bacilli, both live and dead, per visual field. The second is the morphological index, or MI. This calculation isolates the percentage of only the uniformly stained living bacteria. This line graph illustrates why the morphological index is the superior metric for monitoring treatment. Even as the total bacteriological index remains stubbornly high from residual dead bacteria, an effective drug regimen will force the morphological index to drop rapidly to 0. Mouse foot pad cultivation can also test bacterial viability and drug resistance, though the organism's slow replication cycle makes this a 6 to 9 month process. Measuring dead bacteria proves the infection occurred, but tracking the drop in live bacteria via the morphological index proves the current therapy is actively working. Because M. leprae easily develops resistance to single drug treatments, the World Health Organization mandates a rigorous multi-drug regimen for all patients. To combat this resistance, the standard protocol mandates the simultaneous deployment of 3 specific pharmaceutical agents: dapsone, rifampicin, and clofazimine. The initial diagnostic grading dictates the treatment timeline. For patients presenting with paucibacillary leprosy, the regimen lasts for 6 months. For multibacillary patients harboring heavier bacterial loads, the exact same 3 drugs are administered over a strict 12-month duration. While chemoprophylaxis and BCG vaccines offer limited efficacy, aggressive active case finding remains the most effective tool for preventing community transmission. By combining precise microscopic diagnostics with prolonged combination therapy, a pathogen responsible for millennia of disfigurement is reduced to a definitively curable condition.